Citroen rendezvous probably occurred in North America, like this one that occurred in my backyard about 45 years ago. One of the many projects that I have done was to cut a car in half, which I called Toulouse. And I drove Toulouse into a garage and much later sold her engine 30 years later to someone here. This is probably the very first Citroen Rendezvous at Cummington Farms. If it's not, it's the second Rendezvous. One of the many things that we can learn at the Rendezvous is to share information, make friendships. This is Peter Fife from Nova Scotia. He wasn't able to be here this year, but way back then he was demonstrating how to cut your rusty door bottom off and to pop rivet a door bottom that he made onto your car. You may identify some of the people in this picture who are here today, and some who have no longer are interested in Citroën, and some who have passed on to that great big scrapyard up in the sky. Michaela, my daughter, is in the middle there, and this is the first or second Rendezvous, and this was a collection of the kids there. That's one of my 10 or so safaris, yes. Next slide. Michaela and I, at the end of each rendezvous, would have a picture taken of us, often late in the day, tired, or in some cases wet. And this is after one of our t-shirt selling adventures. And this was from a couple of years ago. That's Michaela's 1970 French D Special, D Super, they called it. I chose this slide because it brings a lot of things together. This is Dave Burnham with his original short car. And in the background is Michaela, awestruck at the vision of this short Citroën. That's me when I had dark hair, stripping a car, one of about 60 D Series that I've owned in the last 40 years. Next. This is sort of before and after. Michaela has worked on the cars off and on since she was about 3. I paid her very poorly then because she really didn't do a very good job. She improved years later. I don't know what car we were stripping where, but she's honestly working there, as you can see from the lack of any protective hand protection. Her hands are covered with grease. This is a station wagon that I cut the rear end off of and attached another undamaged rear end, and she was helping. And this is Michaela working on a project behind the building in Boston that I was super of. That is the second Citroën I bought. Originally, I just paid for the interior, and then I stripped much of the car, and then I paid more money and put all the parts back. And Michaela is about 2 there, but her appreciation of the automobile is shown in the next slide. It's one of my favorite pictures of her. After owning about 30 D Series, I went on a search with very little money looking for a convertible. And this is a convertible that the man was asking $1,500 for in Larchmont, New York, around 38 years ago. He claimed to know nothing about the rust problem, but I couldn't find any place on the car where I could jack it up without hearing the crunching of metal. And the next slide is a picture of the trunk where one of the suspension cylinders had broken off. So I looked at a number of convertibles, but they were either terribly rusty or unaffordable for me. This car I bought in upper New York State about 34 years ago, during a very bad time to be buying another car because I was getting divorced from the woman who is Michaela's mother. And so during the divorce, I bought the car in secret after some difficult negotiations, and after the divorce was over, I and a friend and Michaela went up to pick it up where I had hidden it in Bristol, Vermont. Michaela had a mouthful of gum, so her cheeks aren't that much like a mafioso, really. I stored the car for 34 years, and this is where well, after a lot of consultation and a lot of prodding from Michaela and her volunteering to pay for the restoration, to her great credit, and she said, if I must say that I should remind you all that she's a realtor in the Boston area. So Michaela very generously has been funding the restoration that we've given the car to Dave Burnham for that project. I'm sort of a pack rat, and this represents part of the 7 hours that it took me to get the car out of the back of my barn to the front. In that picture was a person, but he's covered up with parts. He's sort of in the middle. This is, if you know anything about a 64 Citroen, their brakes are great when they're working, and after so many years of inactivity, they're very inclined to seize up. So among other things, we removed the fenders to have access to the brakes. And the car would start and it would elevate, but I couldn't dare put it in, shift it into gear, it being Citromatic, for fear that it would stay in gear for the rest of the time we were attempting to get it on the trailer, etc. That's Paul Riccardi. He's over there. He has nerves of steel. He volunteered to tow the car last January to Dave Burnham's in Delancey, New York, near here. But first he had to carry his charm with him, which is he always carries a 2CV chassis with him wherever he goes. So he put that in the back of his van. So this is the first time the car has seen sunlight in about 14 years. This is the notorious Mercedes Sprint tow vehicle, which turned out to be a little light and a little underpowered, perhaps, to tow the U-Haul trailer. And I told the U-Haul people we were towing a 64 Chevy for fear that 64 DS9 convertible was not in their books and they weren't going to rent me the trailer. Paul and Michaela have bowels of steel, but I don't. So in Keene, New Hampshire, we pulled over so I could go to the bathroom. And this was a small snowstorm in January. And Paul, being the careful guy he is, he took a look around the trailer, and this is what he found. We were missing a rear tire. There was only a little shred of the tire. Now, my hearing isn't great. I don't think Paul's is either. Michaela said she had heard this scraping sound, but Paul diagnosed it as many other possibilities. So he was quite taken back to find we were actually missing a tire. And I was quite upset because we were already very behind schedule. To my amazement, the U-Haul people came out and actually changed the tires. Unfortunately, soon after that, we encountered some hills, I think, near the border of Vermont. And the slushy roads weren't very well maintained. And going up one of the hills, we went from 70 to 60 to 50 to 40 to 30 to 20, and we were crawling. We were literally crawling going over the top of that hill. And we had been joking around and doing a lot of talking up to that hill, but there was deadly silence among the three of us. And later, Michaela told me she was tempted to jump out and push. And I had the same feeling. Once we made it over that hill, we turned back because Paul knew there were higher hills coming, and we chose an alternative route to go down to the Mass Pike, but not without yet another incident. Do you mind if I tell them about Paul's Devil's Triangle? Okay. There was this rotary near the border of New Hampshire and Vermont, and Paul has had a number of scary experiences there. Years ago, he was towing his Mahari on a trailer through that rotary, and he noticed a lot of people waving at him. And he thought that it was unusual that they would be able to know what a Mahari was and to be enthusiastic about that. But he looked in his rear view mirror and he was still towing a trailer, but there was no Mahari on it. And then he looked further back and saw that in the middle of the rotary was sitting the little Mahari. So he drove rapidly to a local gas station, ran down to the rotary, turned the car on, and drove it up, only this time he secured it to the back of the trailer. Well, this is the same gas station, and while we were there gassing up, and I was in the bathroom, and when we got back in his van, I noticed this lady next to us sitting in her SUV, and I thought, I don't need to tell anyone. Surely she sees us here. She won't back into us. But then I saw her backup lights go on, and we were only a couple of feet from her. So I yelled to Paul, blow the horn, blow the horn. But he didn't see any reason to until we felt the van move. So that's why, next slide, please. That's why there's a police car in the background. A further delay to a very, very stressful day. So it was a snowstorm and there were many small accidents. Luckily, we weren't one of them, but we had to wait an hour for the policeman to come. And I kept going to the bathroom and I kept coming out hoping the policeman was there. He did come and they were hoping I'd stay in the bathroom because he wanted an accident report from everybody. So when I came out, he said, are you part of this? And I said, well, I'm a passenger. So he gave me this accident report that I needed to fill out. Now, I had been sitting in a lawn chair in the back of Paul's van. There's only 2 seats in the front. So he said to me, of course, you were fully belted and seated, right? I said, of course. He said, were any people ejected from this accident? I said, no, we were just run into from the side. We were standing still. And he asked me many other questions. And then he asked me for my driver's license. And he said, oh, you are a very youthful 72. So it was a good day. That's us at Dave Burnham's. Dave is happy, Michaela's happy, Paul's happy, I'm happy to be alive. We're all happy. As I said, we didn't dare shift the car into Citroen, but it did start and it did rise up. So it's on a cable and David is in his garage pulling it in. Now this, I think, is an interesting experience. You hear about near-death experiences and people seeing the light. This car has seen the darkness. This car knows it's going to be resurrected. It's going to have a new life. But first it has to see the darkness. This is in May. In May I took a truckload of parts out to help with the restoration, and Michaela and Dave were discussing possibilities, what to do, how to proceed. This, if you saw the chassis here, this is restructuring it so it doesn't flex and change shape during the rust attention that it's getting. This is the sort of turtleback part of the convertible, detached from the car, just sitting on end. And this was Dave pointing out where the seam was in the door, where Citroen had cut one door and added an additional door piece to make the longer convertible doors. This was its three main bearing engine cleaned and getting ready to be restored. Nuts and bolts. More consultation. David has a very rare Citroen brochure showing body colors, possibilities, interior possibilities, and there Michaela is looking over some things where we need to make some decisions. This is my very last picture. It's the sort of the end or the beginning. This was the chassis as we last saw it in May, and hopefully next year we'll see you all in perhaps a completed car. No pressure, Dave. Thank you.